we have that program is primarily because 79% of South Africa's land is currently in private hands. 90% of within that cohort is white people.
No, sorry, I need to stop you there, Mandisa. You say 90%. Just today, the Centre for Development and Enterprise produced a 70-page report which says that since 1994, since democracy, 20% of agri-land in South Africa, agricultural land, has been transferred from white people to black people.
No, but that's not true.
Well, you say it's not true.
That's
they
not
say
true
it's
because
true
under the current land restitution program of the ANC government, which, by the way, has been extremely corruptly handled,
yes,
right?
we can agree on that.
Mishandled. Only 9% has been transferred. Let's stick to the reason why.
No. But sorry, you're mixing two things together.
I'm not.
You are. They are saying by all means of transfer. Not communal land. You support people not having private
I'm not sure what you mean by all means of transfer.
All means of transfer. Willing seller, willing buyer.
We must be very clear that this all means of transfer that you're talking about is not inclusive and it does not accommodate Africans. Africans can't afford to buy land in South Africa.
But the state, and sorry, can we just talk about affording land? Can you explain to me how, in a country which has currently got a 2.7 trillion, not million, billion, trillion rand national debt, we are going to afford to simply take people's land away when we only have 106,000 taxpayers, all of whom I presume own property, because they're very rich, relatively speaking, to actually fund most of the taxes which are needed for government service? How does this add up in a country with 1%
we must
growth?
not patronize our own people. Because if you keep on this neoliberal rhetoric about
let's cut out
106,000 taxpayers, and you forget that poor people are actually paying with their blood and sweat.
Private.
Every citizen pays tax.
Let's deal with
every citizen pays VAT. Every citizen bears the brunt of the current high fuel prices. Every citizen, especially the poor, are actually subsidizing your electricity bill.
Well, you're a well-paid public representative, so I wouldn't talk about who's...
It doesn't make a difference. A black person who's well-paid and a white person who are well-paid are definitely by any stretch of the imagination.
Can we go back to the 106,000 people?
Framework.
106,000.
You cannot patronize the poor, the 40 million poor black people, and not call them taxpayers.
I didn't say they
No,
weren't
but you've interrupted me.
I said there were 106,000
Mr. Leon,
taxpayers.
you invited me here to talk to you. You didn't invite me here to watch you shout me down, and I'm not going to allow that.
I'm not shouting down.
You need to come back to the topic. I'm here to discuss land expropriation without compensation.
I asked you a question.
Yeah, so
there
stay
are
on the subject.
106,000 private citizens in South Africa who pay the bulk of the personal income taxes. I have no idea.
Give me an example. Christo Visa, he's owing us 3 billion rand. Well, don't tell me about 106,000.
There are 106,000 people
who are actually not paying their tax.
Most of the taxes, who pay most of the private taxes in this country.
Like Christo Visa.
Well, whether he pays tax or not, he says he pays his tax.
Okay.
But
so the only time tax paying is important is when it's a person like Julius Malem. If it's Christo Visa and he's owing 3 billion. No, you are the one. Let's come back to why we're here. Don't discuss this tax-paying thing, because we know how many wealthy white individuals actually spend every day of their lives dodging tax. That's why we are in the crisis that we are in today, because SARS fails to collect tax from everybody equitably. But let a poor black person owe 20,000 rand. They go into your bank account and take it out immediately. Why can't they go after Christo Visa and take every asset that he has?
I'm sure they're going after Christo Visa. I'm not here to represent SARS. Let's deal with another statistic that you don't want to discuss.
Yeah.
The bonds on the farms are now around 170 billion rand. The Banking Association, Cascovadia, says, if you introduce expropriation without compensation, the banks are simply not going to be able to
Let's separate. Let me assist
These are the facts.
Let's separate two things. Expropriation of land does not include expropriation of what is on top of the land. Any assets, any buildings, any structure, fixed structure, even immovable assets that are on top of the land. We are talking about ownership of the land. Earlier on, you were talking about
property,
the unemployment rate, right? Which, of course, is in a dire situation. You can't lecture me about that. I'm right now coming from Fleerhof, where jointly the DA under Herman Mashaba and the ANC government in the province under Uhuru Moilwa have violently evicted
but
people
you support
from Clearo.
Herman Mashaba's mayoralty in Johannesburg.
Now,
you prop him up. So why are you propping up a man who's violating the poor?
We are not propping him up. You know, I don't like when educated people want to sound ignorant like you're doing now. We have never, ever propped up Herman Mashaba.
You didn't oppose him as mayor.
Voted for the opposition in all hung municipalities. It's not our fault that the DA became...
Well, you told the DA, to remove him as a mayoral candidate, and they didn't, and you voted for him.
Let's come back. We voted with opposition parties. Well, remember, Mr. Leon, you know the South African political system better than anybody else because you were in it long ago, right? Yeah. We have a proportional representation system.
I'm aware of it.
So we vote with parties. But we don't vote for individuals. Let's come back to this discussion about unemployment.
No, sorry, you made a remark which I'm afraid cannot go unchallenged.
Like what?
You said, we only here talk about land, not everything associated with property.
I was
section, you're a public representative. You know the Constitution. You've read it. You swore allegiance to it. Section 25(4)(b) says property is not limited to land. In other words, once you allow... No, you haven't explained.
I did.
Once you remove expropriation once you remove the prevention of expropriation and compensation...
land expropriation.
So hang on.
A house is not land.
So no houses are going to be subject to expropriation without compensation?
Of course they won't.
No, but they won't be.
Of course they won't. The land on top, beneath the house.
So we are only talking...
Okay, let's make it practical. We are in the studios of ENCA right now. Yeah. Everything that is here is built on top of land. What we are going to expropriate and not compensate for, and what majority of South African citizens, as you've seen yourself, are demanding right now, and nobody's speaking for them. They're speaking for themselves. What we are going to expropriate and not compensate, it's the land.
Welcome back to Let's Have It Out. Still in studio with me is EFF Gauteng chairperson Mandisa Mashego. Well, let's hear what our viewers have to say. A question from our WhatsApp line is from Chantel in Johannesburg CBD, who says, what does land expropriation mean for someone like me, a 30-year-old employed female with no proven record of land owned by ancestors or backdated family receipts? Thank you for the question, Chantel. Yes, Mandisa. How, according to EFF's policy, will land be meted out? Will certain groups of people be prioritized, and according to what criteria? And I ask this because a lot of the figures that are being bandied about, including by the EFF, is that black Africans only have access to 7% of the urban land and 4% the rural land. In fact, 61% of the land in South Africa has no racial origins because it's owned by trusts, including the trusts you support, like the Ingonyama Trust, churches, juristic persons, corporations. So to answer Chantel's question, how is she going to be expropriated? Is she going to be free from expropriation? Is she a target? Is she a... How are you going to delineate this?
Let's clarify. It's 79% of the land which is in private ownership, and that private ownership is then divided according to entities, so individuals, companies, trusts, etc. And the community-based organizations and organizations like that are a minimum. And then
they're not a minimum.
And then when you break down...
Ingonyama Trust owns millions of hectares in KZN.
No. When you break down the 79%, 72% of that is in white hands.
No,
right?
No one has those figures. No, you can't be clear. Nobody knows because there isn't a racial audit in the deeds office.
The Department of Land Affairs and Rural Development has just released an audit and a study, and the report is available. Let's deal with Chantel's question. I want us to respect Chantel's question.
Yes.
Chantel's question is spot on. Because the ANC government has failed spectacularly in collusion with white property owners to transfer land back to the original owners. And the fact their failure will take more than 100, if not 200 years to correct. We don't have 100 years, I don't have 100 years. So when the land is taken back into full custodianship of the state, and of course that custodianship will be shared in relevant places with traditional authorities, persons like myself and Chantel and everybody in the studio here who has been dispossessed of land historically, whether they have a record of the dispossession or not, because of course the archaeological archives are not there, or rather the anthropological archives are not there to assist most of us, everybody will be allowed to have access to land and have security of tenure. without having to prove, except that they must be a South African citizen. And this distribution will be done equitably. What does equitably mean? If I am Tony Leon, and my parents have left me, as I predictably think they did, have left me some assets, right? Land assets, property, etc. I'm not going to be prioritized. And I should not expect to be prioritized by the state to be given land, especially for primary residential purposes. So Chantal will be an immediate beneficiary.
But Chantal's, I think, asking a different question, but she's not with us, so we can't ask her. She's saying, but I'm in the CBD of Johannesburg. Maybe she owns an apartment there.
Yes.
She's not going to ever be subject to an expropriation without compensation.
The entire land of the country is going to be put in state custodianship.
So she can't own her property privately?
She can own what is on top of the land. I'm not sure.
How do you own a flat?
No one is going to be evicted. The mechanics and all the administrative and bureaucratic processes. You must remember, I think somehow there's a paranoia that exists amongst, especially our white minority portion of the
population. Well, it's not racialized. We ask
no, but it's racialized. I mean, you can see it in the public participation processes. We have AfriForum, by the way. We have AfriForum.
Well, I'm not here to speak
don't say we mustn't racialize it, because we have AfriForum, and I want to send a very clear message to AfriForum.
Well,
Thursday, Friday, Saturday, we're having public hearings here in Gauteng.
They're not on the show.
They must come to those public hearings as citizens of South Africa and behave.
Behave.
No, they must behave. If they don't behave.
So they're not allowed to speak.
If they don't, no, speaking and behaving are two separate things.
You can't determine.
We answered Chantal's question.
Well, I don't think
all citizens will be allowed equal, equitable access to land.
If you own a house or a flat at the moment, will you be able to keep the ownership?
Yes, of course. Why wouldn't you?
But you said you can't own the land.
We will introduce a land use license mechanism.
Where in the world has this worked? The system
in Singapore. Well,
Singapore, you can't own your private property. I promise you can.
Singapore, of course, because the land.
And the state doesn't own the land.
75, of course.
You can
75%.
You can buy a house or a flat.
Don't speak like this, Mr.
But you can.
You are very disappointing. You are going to be able to buy land. You are going to be able to buy a house or any property you want, right? Built anywhere, except you're not going to have the land ownership aspect of it. That will be in custodianship of the state. No one will be chased out of their property.
Why will the state be better at looking after people's interests than the people themselves? Where does that work?
But the government are the people. What are you talking about?
Well, the government, the people right now.
I understand
No, but the government are the people now.
I understand your fear, right? And I share your fear.
We're not here for psychological counseling.
I understand your fear and I share it. No, we all share your fear. Under the current government, it's going to be impossible.
But you just said the government is the people, and 60% of the people voted for this government.
Under the current ANC government, it's going to be impossible because they are corrupt and they can't manage anything efficiently.
We're going to have to take a break, and still to come, we take a few of your questions and calls. Don't go anywhere. Mandisa, just to deal with the part of the world I'm familiar with, South America, a lot of the inspiration for the EFF, your berets, your red shirts, came from Hugo Chavez, and I know that Julius Malema is a big fan of the Chavistas. We have a situation, this report today, that inflation in Venezuela is now going to hit 1,000,000%. 80% of the country, used to be the richest country in South America, now living in poverty. In 1991, they amended the constitution there to allow for expropriation without compensation on the basis that Chavez said at the time, well, look, 5% of the population owns 75% of the land. They did a redistribution. They didn't allow people to get individual title. It was communally held. And what we've got now is that 40% of staple foods, such as maize, are down by 40%, rice by 39%, food riots, people queuing 6 hours for staples. Why is South Africa applying Venezuela-type policies, which you are in your manifesto, going to be exempt from the laws of economic gravity?
There's no such a thing. You just make these things up because you love the capitalist system.
I don't make them up. I can quote you from the IMF report from today.
It benefits you, so you love it. Let's talk.
I'm dealing with facts, not prejudices.
Let's talk to Venezuela. I don't think you should focus on trying to soil the name of Chavez, because during Chavez's time, none of the stats that you are reading were applicable. Who's the president now in Venezuela?
Yeah, the president is, yeah, but it's the same party. It's Maduro. It's the same party.
Do you know what is the problem in Venezuela? It's corruption. The same issue I was speaking to earlier. You know, when the EFF came into government, came into parliament and legislatures in 2014, what was the first thing that we pushed extremely hard for? Was transparency, accountability, and we demanded that that accountability must start right at the top. Do you know why we did that? We are under no illusion that people...
Well, I don't think that's going to meet the argument that's going on in Venezuela tonight.
But it is corruption in Venezuela that's killing the Venezuelan economy.
Tefu from Sasolburg is on the line. Hi, Tefu. What's your question or comment on the program tonight?
Yes, Antonio, thank you very much for this opportunity. My question is, why white people are fearing about having a share about indigenous people of Africa? When they talk of Africa to share the land as indigenous people, why white people make an issue?
You know, Tefu, and I'll give you my answer, and I dare say Mandisa might have a slightly different one. Maybe she'll agree with me, make a nice change tonight. You know, a lot of white people, and I can't speak for the 4 or 5 million white people in South Africa, I can speak for myself. I was a member of Parliament in 1996. I voted in favour of the Constitution of South Africa, which specifically deals with the problems that we have to resolve, equality, racial injustice, and so on. It also protects rights. It's also a basis that everyone in South Africa can join together in a common citizenship. I don't think it's just white people who are raising the questions that I ask now. Some of them certainly are. I mean, for example, former President Kgalema Motlanthe said you don't need to amend Section 25. You need to deal with exactly what Mandisa was saying, which is government corruption. You need to deal with the fact that less than 0.5%.
Please don't put words in my mouth. I want to add
I thought you wanted to deal with corruption.
No. I'm saying to you, you were asking about Venezuela and you were being opportunistic. During Chavez's time, health care in Venezuela was offered to the public at a very good standard. What collapsed Venezuela right now and the economy is the excessive government corruption that is there. The same government corruption that is here in South Africa under a capitalist system. So let's separate the two.
Well, I think we might agree on corruption.
Let's separate the two.
Okay,
the question that came in from Tefo, I need to add to that
but
question.
we don't have
Let
time.
me tell you, yes, we do have time.
Well, I'm sorry,
you don't want to allow time because you have vowed that you are going to bully your way through this session, and I'm not going to allow you.
Please don't put words.
The question is very applicable. I raised it earlier and I said, the issue of white people constantly failing and refusing to cooperate with us is actually becoming a huge irritant because white people have not suffered in this country the way black people have suffered. In fact, white people have benefited from our suffering. We can't continue like that. Currently, the Gini coefficient in South Africa is sitting at 0.9. Were you aware of that? It's 0.1 percentage point away from making us the most or one of the most extremely unequal societies. And let me tell you, guess what? Only 1% of the white population suffers as a result of that 0.9 Gini coefficient. The rest of almost 80% of black South Africans are living below the poverty line, right? So we are not going to get out of the... No.
That has applied EWC and grown the economy. There isn't one.
I just gave you an example.
You didn't.
Singapore
does not expropriate without compensation.
Singapore's land is owned by the government.
We've got to close this. Mandisa has a viewpoint. I think it's not supported by the economic facts such as they are in South Africa and the world. My viewpoint is we've got to grow the economy, create fair shares for all, the economy is at one of its lowest levels in post-apartheid history, and we can't do this if we're going to take property rights, throw them out the window, and along with land goes shares, goes pensions, goes everything, all of which are covered by Section 25. By all means, justice, by all means, social redistribution, but let's do it economically sensible way. Well, you speak for 7% of the people. I support a party that's got 3 times that support. Thank you very much, and keep the conversation going. And that's exactly what this program does. And you can keep going on the hashtag LHIO. Tomorrow night, MKMVA spokesperson Carl Niehaus will be in the chair. Don't miss that conversation. I'm Tony Leon. Thanks for watching, and a very good night to you all.